Welcome to this episode of Reading Adventures with Angie. Today's book, Agatha's Featherbed, Not Just Another Wild Goose Story, features Agatha, some cats, and a small gaggle of geese. Agatha is known for spinning yarns. Do you know what spinning a yarn means? Today's shout-out goes to Rudo Martinson. She's turning 5 and getting ready to go to kindergarten. Rudo, never stop asking questions. There's always somebody who's willing to give an answer. Agatha's Featherbed by Carmen Deedy, and pictures by Laura A. Seeley. Do you see that little shop sandwiched between 2 skyscrapers? The shop belongs to my friend Agatha. She spins yarn and weaves cloth which she sells. The patterns she weaves are so amazing and the colors are so beautiful that people come from all over Manhattan to buy her wares. Agatha loves to talk, and she tells wonderful stories. In fact, you could say, Agatha can spin a yarn better than anyone I know. Here's one she told me the other day, and I know it must be true because Agatha couldn't have made this one up. One afternoon, a little boy was shopping with his mother in Agatha's fabric shop. He was very bored and began playing with a shiny scrap of red cloth. Agatha leaned down and said to him, "That's silk. Do you know where it comes from?" He shook his head. "It comes from worms," said Agatha. "Worms!" he exclaimed. "Why, yes, silkworms," said Agatha. "Wow! What kind of worm does this come from?" he asked, holding up a ball of purple cotton yarn. "That's a very good question," Agatha replied. "That's cotton, and it doesn't come from a worm at all. It comes from a cotton boll that grows right out of the ground." "What about the rest of this stuff?" asked the boy. "Does it come from neat places too?" "Oh, yes. This is wool, and it comes from sheep. That's easy." "You're right," she said. "Now this cloth is linen. Feel how stiff it is. I'll bet you can't guess where it comes from." The boy thought and thought. Finally he asked, "Well, where does it come from?" "A plant called flax," answered Agatha. "Let me tell you something I tell all my customers, especially children. Everything comes from something. Nothing comes from nothing. Just like paper comes from trees and glass comes from sand. An answer comes from a question. All you have to do is ask." It made the little boy smile. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Agatha went upstairs to her apartment. Several months earlier, she had ordered a new feather bed from her favorite catalog, B.B. Lean. It had just arrived that very day. Her old mattress was so lumpy and bumpy, it was like sleeping on coal lumps and cherry pits. Quickly, she changed into her nightgown and brushed and flossed her teeth. She took out the tortoise-shell pins, and her long white hair fell and fell and fell until it lay in little swirls around her feet. Then she brushed it with her boar bristle brush. She never even finished her 100 strokes. She was so eager to try out her new mattress. She settled into bed, and in minutes, she was asleep. Agatha dreamed that her room was filled with strange sounds, hushed whispers, and the pitter-patter of little feet. Suddenly she awoke with a start as she heard her window close with a thud. She turned slowly in bed and saw that standing across her windowsill were 6 naked geese. They were shivering in the cold and covered with goosebumps. She caught them just as they had ducked out. Agatha stared and stared. You could have knocked her over with a feather. At last she opened the window and asked, "May I help you?" The smallest goose, Sydney, stepped into the room. He pointed his pink little wing at Agatha's bed and said, "We want our feathers back." "What?" asked Agatha. "Feathers, Agatha, feathers. You know, we've been listening. Everything comes from something, nothing comes from nothing, just like paper comes from trees and glass comes from sand. The feathers in a feather bed don't grow on trees, my dear," he said. "Where did you think the feathers in that feather bed came from?" asked the little goose. Agatha looked at the bed and she looked at the geese, and she looked at the bed and she looked at the geese. Something in her sensed that her goose was cooked. "I have to tell you, we mean business, Agatha," said Sydney. "I wouldn't mess with a gaggle of angry naked geese. We're not just a bunch of quacks. This could get ugly." But Agatha had already made up her mind. She had worked hard to earn the money to buy that feather bed, and yet, she thought, what about those plucky little guys out there in the cold? "I'll tell you what," said Agatha, a little down in the mouth. "Get back with me in 3 days. Trust me." And she gave them her credit card so they could go book up at the downtown motel. Taking this as a sign of goodwill, they left quietly. Naturally, she'd sent them on a wild goose chase. Then she didn't waste a minute. She went downstairs to her sewing room, snatched her scissors, and got to work. For 3 days, she didn't open her shop or speak to anyone. And on the 3rd night, just as they'd agreed, the geese came tapping at her window. This time, Agatha was expecting them. She had left the window open, and she smiled to herself as they popped in, one by one. "We're back, Agatha," said Sydney. "We had a great time with that credit card. They kept wanting to give us a bill, but we just said, 'No thanks. The last thing we need is another bill.' And then—" But he never finished his sentence. As he looked across the room, he saw, hanging on her wall, were 6 white fleecy coats. Agatha had spun and woven and sewn each one. The geese were extremely grateful and thanked her kindly. Each goose slipped into his new coat and took a gander in the mirror. As they were about to leave, Sydney turned to Agatha and said, "You know, Agatha, these are really magnificent coats. Whatever did you make from them?" Agatha sat up in her bed, and the geese saw that their coats were made from Agatha's hair. And Agatha smiled and said, "Everything comes from something. I have your feathers, you have my hair. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, eh, Sydney?" "Oh, Agatha," said one of the geese, "you keep us in stitches." "By the way, Agatha," added Sydney, chuckling, "your hair looks just ducky, and lucky for you and me, hair grows back just like feathers." Agatha says she's never heard another honk from her fine feathered friends. However, someone's been leaving fresh goose eggs on her doorstep every morning. Where Where do goose eggs come from anyway? The author's note at the end of this book is for parents and teachers. Here is a portion of it. We all know that asking questions and having them answered develops bright, inquisitive minds. Agatha encourages children to ask the origins of many commonplace things. Today, there are many places to find answers to the questions we have. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time.